This one's a drum brake, and there are various different options. You take the drum off by sticking a couple of 8mm screws in the threaded holes in the drum. Well, that was fairly painless, wasn't it? So the Jimny rear brakes, awkward little buggers. First of all, we need to release these clips. So you can just get a screwdriver into the slot in the clip, push it and turn it. Now it's always a fairly good idea to take a couple of photos so that you remember just where those springs were. A spring on the bottom that needs to come off. We have to loosen off the handbrake cable as much as we can, and the adjuster, I believe, is actually in the cockpit. And yes sir, there it is, just down there through that notch in the handbrake lever. 10mm head by the looks of things. So I just count the number of turns that I undo it by. It will make the job easier when I put the thing back together. And then the brake shoe assembly is loose. So the easiest way to get the shoes out is to take off the cylinder, which is something of a nuisance. So first of all, I'm going to clamp the flexible hose which leads to the back axle so that we don't lose too much brake fluid. So there we are, I've got one of these brake hose clamps. I'm just going to put that on. Now the brake pipe nut is a different story. It's only got a 10mm hexagon and it's a bit rusty, but I find these vice grips, which grip in 3 places, excellent. I find them better than flare nut wrenches. Now I've got the thing loose, so we'll work it a bit because we don't want to twist that pipe off. It's a good copper pipe. So there we are, that's the wheel cylinder off. Now releasing the handbrake cable couldn't be much more awkward. You can grab hold of it and pull it backwards against the spring with a pair of long-nosed pliers, and then lift it to release it. The Jimny handbrake cable is particularly awkward to get off because it's held on by that little push fit connector, which has 3 barbs which open out and prevent it from coming backwards. It can be done with a 12mm spanner. If you force the spanner up to close the barbs, and then you can withdraw the cable. Would be better to make a special tool, but hell, I've got plenty of 12mm spanners. Now, just in case you forgot, this is the arrangement of the brake shoes and their springs. Very difficult to put on with the slave cylinder in place because that is a really strong spring. You can get it with a pair of mole grips or vice grips and manage to get it in place, but we've got the slave cylinder off, so we can do it in one piece. Now, you don't have to do this job very often, and if you're doing the brake shoes and you happen to have the original brake pipes on the vehicle, it's a good time to change them for copper ones, and then you have the slave cylinders off anyway. Well, this slave cylinder seems to be working okay, so I'm just going to wire brush it and free off that bleed nipple and put it back on. So make the rest of the job easier for yourself. Take the bleed nipple out, clean it, check it's unobstructed, grease it and then put it back in. So if you've been lucky enough to get the springs back on, you locate the shoes in the notches in the cylinder and at the bottom of the back plate, and you put back on the little spring clips. There are various notches in the end of the flange which make the job easier for you. Of course, that's what they're there for. Just like that. Putting the handbrake cable back on really is rather awkward, and there's a hole in the brake shoe, so you can move the lever forward, just have it locked a little bit forward, then you get the cable, move the spring back like that, and you can, if you're lucky, get it in. Right, we put the wheel back on. Don't forget to adjust the handbrake, and if this video helped you, I'd very much appreciate it if you'd subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost you anything.